Hey everyone, thanks for joining today. Today we'll be talking about leveraging AI to simplify your search for the perfect CX technology. If you made it out to the conference, the Customer Connect Expo, April 16th and 17th, 2025 in Vegas, you'll probably see this live, but this is a pre-recording so that we can push this out on social media and then also show it to people who could not attend the event. Little intro. My name is Aarde Cosseboom. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Palomarr. Palomarr has two R's on it. You'll see our logo on every slide. We'll talk a little bit about Palomarr and what we do, but by no means is this a sales pitch. This is just to talk about how buyers should be leveraging AI to simplify the search for technology, specifically CX technology. So we're going to be talking a little bit about customer experience technology. We also lump in BPO services as well. So business processing outsourcing, anything for the contact center, whether it's a sales or customer service team. This is our area of expertise. Now, AI is a very interesting word. It's a very large, open-ended word. We'll define it a little bit more. We'll describe how AI works, at least with regards to finding technology. We'll also talk a little bit about how Palomarr works, and why we built the product and what business solution we're trying to solve for, which is the issue of spending a lot of time, usually wasted time, trying to find the perfect CX technology. So we'll talk a little bit about AI. We'll talk a little bit about the CX ecosystem or customer experience technology ecosystem, and we'll talk about the buyer persona, which probably is yourself if you're viewing this. As we go through this process, I'll be answering lots of questions about what are the best ways to buy technology, or at least discover technology options that would be a good fit for you and your organization. All right, we'll jump in. So first things first, let's talk about the problem. So we call this the CX buyer's dilemma, and at Palomarr, we've designed AI and a private GPT model to basically solve for this. And this is a study that was published about 4 years ago by Gartner. And what Gartner did was they researched where people got stuck in the buying process, disrupting the buying activities for technology. This is not specific to customer experience technology. This is just general technology. It's any procurement team, any company, large, small, medium-sized. They found that 27% of the time they researched independently online. So think about review sites, going online and doing your own research, compiling it offline somewhere, or maybe in an online shared doc with their teams. 18% of it was researching independently offline. I get a lot of questions around this. What does that even mean? Word of mouth, going to conferences, talking to your peers, but not necessarily looking at a review site. So calling up your a colleague that is at a similar company in the same role. 22% of the time was stuck meeting with internal buying group. So think of this as you've got a champion or someone on the procurement team, or maybe you're the SVP of the contact center. You have to get executive buy-in. You have to understand what your team needs. So you need to meet with the internal stakeholders. Sometimes that's IT, sometimes that's legal, to figure out what are the actual features and functionalities that you need before you even start looking at suppliers. And then 16% of the time was spent in other tasks. Usually this is mundane tasks, setting up of meetings, replying to emails, trying to put everything into a project scope. So building a project proposal, designing executive summary boards, things like that. That's all other time that was spent during these buying activities. And only 17% was actually spent on meeting with potential suppliers. Now, 17% is a pretty low number. Obviously, you want that to be one of the larger areas of time spent, but also, who knows if those potential suppliers were the right suppliers? Maybe a lot of those were dark horses, or they were unfruitful conversations. So even that 17% could be a little bit wasteful. So in whole, 83% of their time was spent in what we call the early stage, understanding your current issue, establishing objectives, setting a strategy. Very little of that time went to the middle, exploring options, setting vendor criteria, and even less of that time was in late, which is examining alternatives, planning implementation, measuring potential results, and then eventually going into a purchasing decision. So when you look at this, 83% of the time is spent in early. A large chunk of that 17% that's left is used in middle, and very little, less than 1% of the time for the whole project was spent in late. But if you look at this the other way, and you don't put amount of time spent in each category, you would argue that middle and late are more valuable, a more valuable use of someone's time from a project management standpoint than early. Obviously, early is very important. You don't want to start exploring options and meeting with suppliers when you don't have established objectives and you don't have a clear understanding of what product set you're trying to go after. But I would argue that 83% is too much. Maybe 50% in early, or maybe a little bit less, or a little bit more. So let's zoom into that a little bit more. Why are people getting stuck in the early stages? And we broke out each of the stages. This is a buyer's journey from beginning, so project conception, to a purchasing decision. This slide is purposely meant to be large. We actually pared it down. Our original slide for this presentation had about twice as many actions here. But what we wanted to do is articulate the complexity that goes behind researching solutions involving project owners and team members, identifying the problem, finding a solution, building requirements, and then finally choosing a supplier, and then actually executing a contract. And this is why buying technology is so hard, and this is why the majority of people either give up on the project or they turn to what's called a trusted advisor, someone to help them through this process. The ones that you would think of that are major, Deloitte, EY, very expensive. They basically come in and do all this stuff for you and then give you a report at the end and say, go buy this thing. Also takes a lot of time, also is extremely expensive, also can be relatively disruptive to your business, as you have to feed them information because they aren't owners and operators of your business like you are. So let's talk a little bit through this. I'm going to go through it super fast. I'm going to skim over a lot of the stuff. The things to call out here: when you're in the early stage of problem identification, a lot of independent online research. You're asking your peers, or your community. You may bring in a consultant or expert. We call that a trusted advisor. Then you'll go into solution exploration. Oftentimes the information is overwhelming. Sometimes the problem is misaligning with potential solutions. So maybe you might need a hammer, but you get a screwdriver instead. Same things to be said about technology. You might talk to a chatbot provider, but you might not need a chatbot. You might need a voice bot or an agent assist tool. Eventually, you get to a point in the solution exploration where you have a business case. You develop we found the right tool or tools for the business problem. Then you can start building your requirements. You can release an RFP, which is just a fancy acronym, essentially, that describes, here are the lists of requirements for this project or for this business case, and I want X amount of suppliers to respond with how they can solve our business case. Then it pauses again, and then you get stuck because you talk to certain suppliers, you may meet them, you might be in a demo phase, you have to ask for budget internally. And then you also have to, after they respond to the RFP, or after you take a demo, or after you reach out to them and set a meeting with one of the potential suppliers or vendors, you want to do a little bit more research on that supplier or vendor. Do they have other similar customers? Are they large enough and they're not going to go bankrupt next year? What's their service level agreements? Will they fit with our current ecosystem? Lots of questions. That's all in the requirements building phase. And then finally, the supplier selection phase. So you shortlist your suppliers. You finally get rid of suppliers that don't make sense from either a budgetary match standpoint or feature set match standpoint or partnership standpoint. You select your vendor of choice. This is the aha moment. We know where we're going. This is how we're going, who we're going to choose. And you negotiate budget. And if all goes well and budget makes sense and you negotiate the contract with the customer and it fits your budget, you get your executive sign off. They say, here is the business case. Here are the people who we talked to. This is the one supplier that we selected. It fits our budget and we've negotiated the best price. Now let's purchase. That's the aha moment. I just described this whole journey. This journey can take anywhere from 1 month to 18 months to 2 years, if done inefficiently, and also if done only 83% of the time in the first stage, problem identification. So what we highlighted here are 4 bubbles. One's in solution exploration, one's in requirements building, one is in the supplier, 2 are in supplier selection. These are the most important bubbles. These are the tasks that you have to complete to get to the next phase. And these are the exact things that we built Palomarr for. So if you use Palomarr and our AI, you can skip over essentially or automate everything that's not highlighted in the darker colored squares. And we've actually built out an automated RFP process, the ability for people to build their business case within minutes. And then also they can select their vendor of choice, and if they get executive approval, they can make a purchasing decision right away. So taking a 6-month process or a 2-year process and shortening it down to a day or a week or a month or however long you want. Another problem with customer experience technology in BPOs is that it's rather complex. We don't consider customer experience to be a commodity. It is a core functional tool set or a CX ecosystem that fits within your actual business. You are the contact center is the eyes and ears of your organization. They hear all the customer complaints, issues. Whenever there's a problem, they're the first people to know. They're those eyes and ears for the rest of the organization. Your sales team, which also might use a contact center tool or a CX tool, they're the voice and face of your company. They're the people who are verbally or in written form communicating with your potential customers. They're sitting in front of your brand. They're talking to your customers and representing your organization. Those 2 functions are some of the most important functions for an operating business, for most operating businesses. Neglecting them and neglecting their tool sets and starving them of technology is actually very detrimental to your company and your brand for the majority of companies out there. So what we did was we broke the CX ecosystem into what we like to call core, intermediate, advanced, innovative, and then also separated the workforce portion of it. The bubbles are colored by whether they're core tools or intermediate, advanced, innovative. If you're just starting out, you want to start with the dark blue, and then eventually the light blue, eventually the green, and eventually the lime green. And then if you don't want to do everything in-house, you can use a BPO or an outsourcer, and that is in purple. The circles are sized sized small to medium to large based off of how valuable that specific tool set is to the operation of a contact center. So an IVR ACD, a WFM, a CRM, or a collaboration tool, those are the most important things you have to do that first. Much to say about security, network, and hardware. Obviously, you need to arm your employees with physical hardware, headsets, or connectivity to the internet, or security around that connectivity to the internet to service your customers or perform the tasks. The other bubbles outside, even though they're not a part of the core, they may be extremely valuable. Self-service would be one. PCI compliance, even though it's really small, it is super valuable. The reason why it's small in this infographic is because not all organizations need to be PCI compliant and take credit cards over the phone or email or chat. Okay, the overlap in circles is exactly what you would think it would be. This is how these tools need to interact with each other. So they integrate with each other if they overlap. If you can see things like the QM bubble there, that fits very nicely in between your IVR and ACD and your WFM tool. Your speech analytics tool can overlap those two, and also a little bit of collaboration. Your outbound dialer can overlap those two, and maybe a little bit of CRM, because it might need to pull from a list of sales leads from your CRM. So the positioning and overlap of the circles is as important as the size or the color. Now, this can be rather complex, and we recommend that you use AI to help you to do that. And if you can't use AI, then obviously reach out to us at Palomarr, and we'll help you either navigate through the AI or we have expert consultants to help you as well. I'm just going to put a bunch of the logos. These are well-known suppliers in each of these bubbles. Now, the reason why I say well-known suppliers in each bubble, there are plenty more suppliers in each of these bubbles that are lesser known. These are just the ones that rank the highest: Gartner Magic Quadrant and Capterra or G2 Crowd review sites. They rank them the highest. Not only because they're the largest and also have a lot of consumers or customers, but also because they've been proven in the industry to be able to perform that task. So the hardened logos or companies in this space. There are way more. Even this slide can be very overwhelming for people. And most people say, I just want the easy button. Just here's my business, here's my use case and need. Tell me the 1 to 5 products I need. Which suppliers should I talk to first? And that's exactly what Palomarr does. All right, so let's take a step back. Let's talk about why one of the largest companies in the world, Amazon, was created. And if you remember, Amazon actually started as an online bookstore. So you can find the right book and purchase it online without having to go to a physical bookstore. And after Amazon became somewhat successful in the early-ish 90s, Jeff Bezos actually has a quote that he published. And one of the quotes, I want to read the full thing because this is exactly why we should use AI or LLMs for customer experience technology procurement or searching for the right CX technology. So what he said was, out of all the different products you might be able to sell online, books offer an incredibly unusual benefit that set them apart. There are more items in the book category than there are items in any other category by far. And what Mr. Bezos was trying to articulate here is innovation and helping the buyer or the consumer find the right thing out of a large library, no pun intended, library of options. The larger the library and the more complex of the category, the better a automation tool can be, much like Amazon. So when you shop for things on Amazon today, you're doing your search in the words that you want to search for. So you can say like, I want a brown coffee table made from chestnut. That's your own natural words. It's going to find those options for you. You're not using the Amazon search to say, I need coffee table, and then brown, comma, chestnut, comma, and then after that, you're selecting a bunch of filters. You're actually just typing in your own words what you're looking for. And if you don't like the options it provides you, you can click on a product and see similar products. So think of Palomarr as the same thing, or at least the way that we're designing our product, to Amazon, in which we want you to say your own words. I'm trying to reduce headcount needs on my contact center. I think self-service would be helpful. It's gonna say you might need chatbots, you might need voice bots, you might need self-service, and then it's going to ask follow-up questions until it can provide potential options. But those are your own natural words and output exactly what you're looking for. Let's talk a little bit more, and I talked about this before, about why LLMs are so useful for finding CX technology. So we talked about the CX ecosystem, over 200 CX suppliers, technology suppliers, and there's over 200 BPOs in that category. So that CX ecosystem, the bubbles with all of the logos that we showed earlier, there's over 400 of them just in our portfolio. And there's new companies that are emerging almost every single day, especially with the proliferation of AI in this space. CX categories are also changing regularly, and the data on suppliers is changing regularly in real time. So suppliers, like a large supplier that, let's say, is a WFM product, they might do a feature release at 8 a.m. this morning. You'll want to know what's in that feature release, what's good, what's bad, what can that supplier do that they couldn't do yesterday. So that's another reason why it's important to use AI or LLMs to help with the search. CX industry best practices change all the time, and you know this probably better than we do, but your business objectives may change as the industry changes. So you might want to offer self-service. You might want agent assist for your agents. You might want Bluetooth headsets instead of hardwired headsets or physical phones on desks. The need for the businesses or the CX industry itself changes with the best practices that are happening in the ecosystem. So with those three things, it's really important to try to stay ahead of the curve and most current. And the best way to do that is to consume a lot of that information using AI. That's what we do at Palomarr. So what does an LLM do? Let's break it down. Let's go a little higher level. An LLM can process large amounts of texts about customer experience technologies. So chatbots, self-service, feedback analysis, anything that's out there that has to do with customer experience. Processing large amounts of information is extremely important. It can identify and categorize tools as that supplier category starts to change. So chatbots, voice bots, voice assists, ticketing systems, case management systems, all these terms change regularly. The suppliers that fit into those categories change regularly. Some suppliers get moved out, some suppliers get moved in, some suppliers build out roadmaps and release features to fill in gaps. LLMs do that. They help with the categorization of large groupings of data. And then the last one is it understands core concepts, such as CRMs are used for tracking customer interactions. So it understands the contextual information that it is not only categorizing, but also processing in response to whatever the user's request is. And that's extremely important for the industry. Thinking about using LLMs as a subjective tool to answer your subjective question is something that everyone should think about and start using. And we do that within Palomarr. So not necessarily asking what's the best chatbot. You can say, Palomarr, are chatbots good? And what are the potential strengths for my contact center if I were to deploy one? And then it would respond. It would understand your concept and respond with information. Let's talk a little bit about buying options you have today without LLMs. So you really have three ways to purchase, or at least find the right CX technology. You can talk to a trusted advisor. So that would be Deloitte, EY, that would be your neighbor down the street. That can be an old work colleague that's in the same industry. You could talk to a friend of a friend who knows someone in the industry. That's your trusted advisor. That's leaning on one person's expertise. You could also go to review sites. So you can do your own research online. You can look at G2 Crowd, Capterra, Gartner, you name them. There's plenty of sites out there. There's lots and lots of information. I'm not knocking those sites. They're very useful for what they were designed for. You can also go direct to supplier. So you can say, you know what? I used Five9 at my last company. I'm just going to go talk to Five9. Or I used Dialpad. I'm going to go talk to my Dialpad rep. That's another option. That's another way to jumpstart or get down the process. Using a trusted advisor, using review sites, and going direct to supplier all have their pros and cons. So the cons for trusted advisors is that there's human bias, that trusted advisor only has a limited amount of supplier options or expertise in the space. There's no way they know all 400 suppliers. There's no way they know exactly what each supplier released this morning. Also, they have human bias. They have seen their customers or people that they advise have success with supplier X or supplier Y. So they're going to tell you those first before they tell you agnostically what they recommend. Review sites, there's a lot of data. It's an overwhelming amount of data. Also, most of the review sites, you never tell the review site who you are or what the business problem is you're trying to solve for. So they don't really focus on your business needs, on what you're looking for. So if you look for a chatbot on a review site, you might get 400 options. All of them are chatbots, and maybe half of them are horrible for your industry, or half of them have really bad reviews, or half of them you have to have Salesforce or Zendesk first. The other con there is there's a little bit of pay to play. So review sites will incentivize, and they'll report to you. They'll tell you if it was incentivized for review or not. But people are paid gift cards, for example, to put in a review. And obviously that's going to sway the review polarizing, either really, really bad, 1 star or 0 stars, or 5 stars, or 10 out of 10. But also the user is building a review of a product when they don't actually want to review the product. They just want the prize. They want the $10 Starbucks gift card. So the context or the information has users bias and may not be truthful or just not relevant. Direct to supplier. Some of the cons: you miss out on other supplier options. So you say, oh, I use Dialpad or Five9 or NiceDX1. You go straight to them. You're missing out on other potential options that might be better for your organization. You have a lack of competitive buying advantage, meaning that you can't pit one supplier against the other. Oh, I'm talking to 2 suppliers. I heard the other supplier has this feature. Do you have this feature? Oh, also the cost is a little bit cheaper. Can you match that cost? And also, you usually as a buyer have to fit into the supplier's feature set needs. You're no longer talking about what you need as a business. They are saying how their product works and how your business should fit into how their product works. It's very different when you go direct to supplier, or you're in the driver's seat and you are talking to multiple suppliers and have the competitive buying advantage. There's lots of pros to them as well. You have industry knowledge or expertise. There's additional project resources. Review sites have large amounts of data. It's extremely helpful. They have an updated portfolio of suppliers. Think of them as like a dictionary that's updated. Direct to supplier, industry knowledge and expertise, additional project resources, much like a trusted advisor. They could also help when negotiating of pricing. If you think about buying a car, you can do all of these as well. You can go to a review site, or you can go directly to that supplier. We'll say Ford, or we'll say Mazda. Or you can go to a trusted advisor. So you can go to a car lot that sells all sorts of new and used cars. Where Carvana, and they're not a sponsor of ours and they're not a customer, I'm just trying to articulate a point. Carvana sits right in the middle, where it has all of the pros of the direct supplier, review sites, trusted advisor, and none of the cons of those. And same with Palomarr. We position ourselves right in the middle of these three. We process large amounts of data, we leverage the industry knowledge of a trusted advisor, and we help with project resourcing. We also can help negotiate pricing, and we can, I didn't mention this earlier, but with Palomarr, you don't buy anything from us. We'll never sell you a technology. You buy directly from the supplier. We just make the introduction. All right, so how do LLMs work? This is a very complex info chart on the right. I'm not going to go over all of it, but I do want to tell you that we focus on the RAGs model at Palomarr, and this is one version of how LLMs work. What does RAGs mean? Retrieval Augmented Generation. So it's a retrieval process, uses search algorithms, pulls informations from web pages, databases, cleans them, QAs them, tokenizes them, which means allows them to be restructured, and then removes unnecessary words. Generation, and the reason why we call it grounded generation is that we at Palomarr use what's called a private GPT. So what that means is that all the information on the open internet about these suppliers feeds directly into our private data warehouse after being cleaned. That's the retrieval process. And then we ground it. We enhance the context and information of the user so that we're providing information that doesn't hallucinate. Now, we'll talk about hallucination in a second, but before we get to that, if you look at the far right model, most people that use LLMs today, whether use Llama, Gemini, Grok, ChatGPT, OpenAI, whatever you want to call it, it may hallucinate because it's using the open internet. It's not pulling into what's called a relational database. We have set up a relational database so that every time you use Palomarr, you are only getting information that's within that database. So it's the most current accurate information about the suppliers, but it's been QA'd and it won't hallucinate. It's set to a temperature in which that it won't make up an answer. It'll tell you I don't know the answer if you ask a question, especially if you ask a silly question like, what's your favorite hot dog? Or how much is a baseball hat at the Angels Stadium? All right, let's talk about hallucinations. So the best comparison that we have is cheese. So if you think of a data set, everything that's within the square, if it has holes, we call that incomplete data. That's much like Swiss cheese. Cheddar cheese has less holes. It obviously does have holes if you zoom in with a microscope, but it's a more complete data set. And then sometimes with LLMs, you actually want to combine the data. So you might want to say it's beneficial for the Swiss and the American to be together so that every time you bite through a sandwich, you're still getting cheese, whether it's a combination of both cheeses or just one because of the hole in the Swiss cheese. So how does it apply to Palomarr and how does it apply to searching for technology? We allow the tool to have incomplete data and have responses where it's I don't know the answer, or this answer doesn't exist, for things that are very specific about a supplier. So you can ask supplier questions in our product. You can say, supplier? Do you integrate with other supplier? What are your features? What is your price? What's your service level agreement? If it doesn't have an answer, it's not going to hallucinate and make something up. It's going to say, I don't know the answer, or it doesn't exist. Complete data. So these are good in our space for subjective questions. Those are things that are opinionated questions. What are your strengths? What are the benefits of this product for my business? Is implementation hard? These are questions you would normally ask a human because they're subjective and you're getting an opinion. We only use complete data to answer that information. We don't use incomplete data to answer that. Now, the last one is combined information. So you might not be asking a question about a specific supplier, let's say Five9, Nice61, Genesis, whatever. Instead, you might ask questions about the category. What's the average price of this type of technology? So we're looking at a grouping of 48 suppliers and 48 databases, and you're compiling it all together, and then it's creating averages and forming a response. It's not subjective. It's a very clear, like, I need to know an answer, and it needs to be within a range, but it's taking an analytical approach, so it has to look at a larger combined data set. How many suppliers are in this category, for example? What's the average contract length for these types of products or services? Once again, not subjective. This is a very clear question that needs a clear answer. So if that's the case, we need to combine the complete data and the incomplete data, which is what we do here at Palomarr. All right, now let's talk about Legos. We went from cars to cheese to Legos, so follow along. Usually when we're talking technology, we like to use examples, and also visual examples are the best. So when you're using LLM prompts, and you can be using LLM prompts with any type of LLM like Gemini or Grok or ChatGPT or OpenAI, it's all about how you ask the question and how detailed you are. And that's to be said about our product as well at Palomarr, and we'll give you some examples on the next slides. And then we'll wrap up. But this is how LLMs work. So the data is there, it's in the data repository. And that's just a bunch of Legos dumped on the floor, different sizes, colors. Some are broken, some are great, some are like been warped from the sun. When you ask your question, it pulls information from that data warehouse, the unstructured data, the bunch of Legos on the floor. It sorts them, and this is all done in real time, faster than a human compute can do it. Sorts them, arranges them. So after it's sorted by color, let's say it may arrange them by block size. It'll present them visually so they can be compared against each other. And then it outputs it based off of your prompt and explained with a story. So the reason why we show this is that it's important for people to ask questions as if they're asking to build with a story, as opposed to asking the LLM, how many red blocks are there? Or are there more red blocks than blue blocks? Those questions, most people ask LLMs, they're going to get very generic answers, and it's not going to solve what they need. What they need to say is, build me a house out of green, red, white, and blue blocks, and it needs to be a 2-story house with 3 bedrooms and 2 baths and a garage. That would be explaining the need or the prompt with a story and then getting that output. So let's talk about the different types of questions. So you can say vague, build me a house. It might build you a very simple house, a 2-story house, a non-functioning house. It may only use 2 colors. It's very vague. It doesn't know what to do, so it's going to do the simplest thing. You could be unclear and say, use different blocks to build a house with a lot of rooms. That's very specific, but very unclear what the outcome is. And you might get a house like this. Lots of unstructured, different blocks, different rooms. It's massive. You can be more specific and say, efficiently build a house with a lot of rooms. But this may be extremely boring for your use case. This may be not using enough color or pizzazz, maybe too stuffy, corporate. So when you're asking questions too specifically, it may not be a good result. And then the final example is what we recommend. Be elaborate with your prompts. Build the house from Disney's movie Up, and then it knows what the use case is, what the user wants, what the outcome is. It has examples in its mind, and then it'll build it from scratch. And it might even build you things you didn't know it could build, like balloons, which I didn't know that you can build out of Legos. So apparently there's certain shapes and sizes that form balloons. So this is what we recommend when you're interacting with LLMs, not only when you're building your prompts, but also when you're using Palomarr. So to wrap it up, we are your AI specialists in finding CX and BPO, CX technology and BPOs. We are an AI tool. We are not a marketplace. We don't sell the products ourselves. We're a tool to help you find and discover all of the robust technologies and partnerships in the CX space. Over 400 suppliers in the portfolio. There's real humans at this organization, so if you need white glove support or help, we're here to do that as well. And we really want the world to use AI to stop searching and start finding, because 83% of your time in research mode is, in our opinion, a wasted amount of time. We'd rather get you there in minutes or days versus months or years. So check it out for yourself. Feel free to click on any of the links in anywhere that we posted this. And if you're interested in reaching out, my information's at the intro slide. We will be at the conference next week, so come join this live session. We'll be presenting this again as well. But also, if you're watching this recording after the event, reach out to us on LinkedIn or go to palomarr.com and click on our events tab so you can see what other conferences or speaking engagements we'll have in the future. Thanks again. Aarde Cosseboom, CEO and founder from Palomarr. Have a great day.